The night was swallowing the world in its silent, empty embrace as I drove down I-80, the endless ribbon of asphalt stretching ahead like a black void. My name's Jake, and I've been hauling freight across the country for nearly a decade. The road was my home, my curse, and my salvation depending on the night. Tonight felt off. The dashboard clock blinked 3:12 a.m., and the CB radio had been quiet for hours. The last gas station I'd passed was 50 miles back, and the next wasn't showing up on my GPS. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional headlights of another restless traveler cutting through the dark. Then I saw him. A lone figure stood by the roadside, his thumb pointed skyward, a small duffel bag at his feet. My headlights washed over him, a man in his late 50s, maybe 60s, wearing a worn-out flannel jacket, jeans, and boots caked in dust. His face was lined with age and exhaustion, his eyes dark pools that caught the light but didn't seem to reflect anything back. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers. Too many horror stories, too many risks. But something about this guy, maybe it was the empty road, maybe the eerie stillness of the night, or maybe just the need for human company after hours of nothing but my own thoughts. I slowed the rig and pulled over. The man grabbed his bag and climbed up into the cab, shutting the door behind him with a heavy thud. "Appreciate it," he muttered, his voice gravelly, like someone who had spent years shouting over loud engines. "No problem," I said, shifting gears and pulling back onto the highway. "Where you headed?" He hesitated, then said, "Nowhere in particular." That should have been my first warning. The hum of the engine filled the cab, a low, steady growl against the silence that stretched between us. Outside, the world was nothing but an endless strip of asphalt flanked by darkness so thick it seemed to press against the windows. The high beams cut through it, revealing nothing but the occasional road sign or the twisted remains of some roadkill, long dead and forgotten. The man beside me sat rigid, hands clasped in his lap, his duffel bag resting between his feet like it carried something heavier than just clothes. I stole a glance at him. His face was worn, the kind of face you see on men who have spent too much time alone, too much time thinking about things they can't change. Deep lines cut into his forehead, his skin weathered from years under the open sky. But it was his eyes that bothered me. Black, deep-set, and watchful, like he wasn't just looking at the road ahead, he was looking at me. "So," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet, "been on the road long?" The man exhaled through his nose, a slow, measured breath. "Long enough," he said. His voice had a strange quality to it. Not just gravelly but tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, the kind that settled deep into your bones, the kind you carried with you. I nodded, eyes back on the road. "Where'd you come from?" Silence. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, just as I was about to change the subject, he said, "Been moving around. Different places, different people." He shifted slightly in his seat, the leather creaking beneath him. "You could say I've been looking for someone." I felt a prickle of unease at the back of my neck. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. Slow. Deliberate. Like the words carried a weight I didn't understand. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Who's that?" The man turned his head slightly, just enough that I could feel his eyes on me. "You." A cold chill ran down my spine, sudden and sharp, like stepping into a room where someone had just whispered your name. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles going white. I let out a forced chuckle. "Well, that's a hell of a coincidence, ain't it?" The man didn't laugh. He just kept watching me, his gaze steady, unblinking. "You don't remember me, do you?" I swallowed. "Should I?" Pause. Then he smiled, just a small curl of the lips, but there was nothing friendly about it. "No," he said. "Not yet." The highway stretched on, an unbroken ribbon of black tar leading us into the unknown. And for the first time in my life, I wished I was anywhere but here. The truck rumbled forward, tires eating up the lonely miles as if trying to outrun whatever tension had settled in the cab. The road stretched endlessly ahead, twin yellow lines flickering in and out of existence beneath the glow of my headlights. I kept my hands firm on the wheel, knuckles stiff, mind racing. The man beside me hadn't moved much since we started talking, but I could feel his presence like a weight pressing against my ribs. I glanced at him again, trying to study him without making it obvious. He still had that small, knowing smile, just a twitch of his lips, but it made my skin crawl. His duffel bag rested between his feet like a loyal dog, and his fingers tapped lightly against his knee, a rhythm I didn't recognize but one that felt intentional, deliberate. "You sure I should know you?" I asked finally, keeping my voice steady. The man exhaled, slow and heavy, like he had been waiting for me to ask. "Names don't matter much, do they?" he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had spent years untangling the meaning of things. "Not on the road." Not in the places we go. That's so. I muttered. He nodded, eyes drifting toward the windshield, watching the road like it held some kind of secret. Ever feel like you've been somewhere before but you don't know when? He asked. I frowned. What, like déjà vu? Something like that, he murmured. Like maybe you've lived a moment before, only the details got shuffled around. Or maybe you forgot something important, something you shouldn't have. The way he said it made my throat dry. I wasn't sure why, but something about his words, something about him was getting under my skin. I reached for my thermos, took a quick sip of cold coffee. Bitter. Too bitter. My hands were shaking. I meet a lot of folks, I said, forcing a shrug. Hard to remember everyone. The man turned his head toward me, slow, deliberate. Even the dead ones? The truck veered. I yanked the wheel hard to the left, tires skidding against the pavement as I struggled to keep the rig steady. My pulse pounded in my ears, the road blurring in the darkness, my mind screaming, what the hell did he just say? When I finally regained control, my breath was coming fast, too fast. The man hadn't moved. He was still sitting there, calm as ever, his hands resting lightly on his lap. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just said something that turned my stomach to ice. I licked my lips, forcing a laugh. You got a dark sense of humor, friend? He didn't laugh. Instead, he sighed, slow and measured, and leaned back against the seat. You always did, he murmured. My heart skipped. My mouth went dry. My skin prickled with something I couldn't name, something worse than fear recognition. I stole another glance at him, my mind working overtime, trying to pin down why he felt so familiar, why his voice scratched at something buried deep in my memory. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His lips curled upward just a little more. Don't think too hard, he said, voice in ear whisper. Sometimes it's better not to remember. The road ahead stretched endlessly, but suddenly, it didn't feel like it led anywhere I wanted to go. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story. The silence between us thickened, heavy as the night pressing against the windshield. The truck's headlights carved out a narrow tunnel of visibility, illuminating the endless stretch of asphalt ahead. Everything outside of that cone of light was nothing, just the empty dark, vast and unknowable. The highway felt less like a road and more like a long, black river, pulling me forward whether I wanted to go or not. The man beside me had settled deeper into his seat, arms crossed, his breathing slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. His duffel bag hadn't moved from its spot between his feet. It sat there, unassuming, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about it made my skin crawl. I kept my hands on the wheel, my grip too tight, my knuckles stiff and pale. What did you mean by that? I finally asked. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The man sighed, almost disappointed. By what? You said I always did. I swallowed, throat dry. Like you know me. His fingers drummed lightly against his knee, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Maybe I do. I let out a breath, forced a chuckle. You know, for a guy who needed a ride, you're not exactly making yourself good company. I didn't say I needed a ride, he murmured. The words settled over me like a cold fog. I risked another glance at him, trying to piece him together, his voice, his posture, the deep lines on his face that looked less like age and more like the weight of something long carried. My eyes flicked to his bag again. I swallowed. What's in the bag? He tilted his head slightly, as if he hadn't expected the question. Then very slowly he reached down and pulled the duffel onto his lap. The zipper gleamed in the dim light of the cab, a thin silver line stretching across the worn fabric. His fingers brushed over it, hesitating. I didn't realize I had stopped breathing until he spoke again. You sure you want to know? Something deep in my gut screamed no. But my mouth had a mind of its own. Yeah, I said. I do. He exhaled through his nose, a sound that might have been amusement or regret. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he unzipped the bag. I gripped the wheel tighter, half expecting something impossible, a weapon, a severed hand, something wrong. But all I saw was a stack of papers. Old yellowed pages. Some loose, some bound together in a thin manila folder. They looked fragile, like they had been handled too many times, read over and over again. My pulse hammered. What is that? The man didn't answer right away. He slid one of the loose pages free, turned it so I could see. And then my stomach dropped. It was my name. Scrawled at the top of the page in bold, faded ink. Below it, dates, locations, handwritten notes in neat, measured strokes. A record. Of me. Of my stops. My routes. My hauls. Notes about the places I'd been, things I'd said. The first date on the paper was over 10 years ago. What the hell is this? I whispered. The man's dark eyes met mine. "You don't remember?" he said softly. Not a question. A statement. My hands were damp on the wheel. My chest felt tight. "Remember what?" He sighed again, heavier this time, like a man exhausted by repeating the same story. Then he turned another page. My stomach twisted. The page held a photograph, creased and worn. Black and white, grainy but still clear enough. A truck stop, an old one I didn't recognize at first. But there was a man in the photo. A man who looked like me. Same build. Same posture. Same damn jacket. Only the truck parked beside him wasn't my rig. It was an older model. A rig that should have been retired years ago. A rig that felt familiar. A horrible pressure filled my skull, like my brain was fighting against something just out of reach. I started, but my voice was failing me. "That's not." The man watched me quiet, patient. Then he turned one more page. And the world tilted. A police report. A name. Jacob T. Holloway. My name. Fatal accident on I-80. A date. March 31st, 2009. The edges of my vision went dark. The truck felt too small, the air too thin. "That's not," I choked out. "That's not right." The man didn't say anything. He just closed the folder. And in the silence that followed, I realized something horrifying. The clock on the dashboard wasn't moving. 3:12 a.m. It had been 3:12 a.m. since I picked him up. Since before that. Since forever. The road outside stretched endlessly ahead, but I knew now it didn't go anywhere. It never had. And I had been driving it for a very, very long time. The truck kept moving, but the road no longer felt real. The hum of the engine, the soft tremble of the tires against asphalt, it was all just noise now, background static in a world that was suddenly crumbling at the edges. My breath came in shallow bursts, my pulse a hammer in my throat. The folder still sat on the man's lap, the police report staring at me like an accusation. I tried to tear my eyes away, but I couldn't. My name. My death. Right there in black and white. My voice was hoarse like I had been screaming for hours. "This has to be a mistake." The man just watched me, dark eyes unreadable. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He let me fight it on my own. I gritted my teeth, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. "I'm alive," I spat. "I'm right here. I'm driving this damn truck." But I wasn't, was I? The thought slammed into me like a freight train. I couldn't remember where I was coming from. I couldn't remember where I was going. Hell, I couldn't even remember what I was hauling in the back of the rig. My entire night, the miles, the pit stops, the fuel-ups blurred together like a half-formed dream. The clock still read 3:12 a.m. The truck had been moving for hours, but time hadn't. I swallowed hard. "No," I whispered. No, this isn't real." I dug my fingers into the steering wheel, feeling the smooth, worn leather beneath my palms, the vibration of the road beneath the tires. It felt real. I felt real. But so did the man beside me. And he was still watching. Waiting. For me to understand. I squeezed my eyes shut for half a second, trying to will the world back into something that made sense. The cab. The road. The truck. Me. I was alive. I had to be. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something in the darkness outside. A flicker. A shape. I turned my head before I could stop myself. Headlights. Blinding. Barreling straight toward me. I sucked in a breath. My hands yanked at the wheel on instinct, but the truck didn't move. I didn't move. The headlights roared closer, impossibly fast. A horn blared. A deafening, gut-shaking blast that rattled through my ribs. And then all at once the memory came crashing down. The rain. The slick highway. The oncoming truck that shouldn't have been in my lane. I saw it again, clear as day. The way my hands jerked the wheel too hard, the tires screaming against wet pavement. The weight of the rig shifting, tipping, the world flipping end over end. The crash. The metal twisting, the windshield shattering, the weight of my own truck crushing down on me. The smell of gasoline. The heat. The moment where I had realized too late. I wasn't going to walk away. My vision blurred. I was shaking. My whole body, my hands, my breath, everything trembling as if I was still there, still inside that twisted wreck, pinned under the weight of my own damn life. I sucked in a ragged breath. The cab of the truck was silent now, but the man was still beside me. His expression hadn't changed. But his voice, when he spoke, was softer than before. "You remember now." I couldn't speak. I turned back to the road, but there was nothing ahead. Not the highway. Not the horizon. Just an endless stretch of darkness, deep and empty, stretching out forever. The truck wasn't moving anymore. Maybe it never had been. The man beside me shifted. "This is the last stop, Jake," he murmured. My hands fell from the wheel. I let them rest on my lap, staring out at the void in front of me. "I don't want to go," I whispered. The man nodded, slow and understanding. No one ever does. For the first time since he had climbed into my cab, I turned to face him fully. And in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, I finally recognized him. I had seen him before. At truck stops. In gas stations. In the reflection of my side mirror on roads just like this one. Always watching. Always waiting. Not a hitchhiker. Not a man. A passenger I had picked up a long time ago. I let out a shuddering breath. My hands were steady now. And when I spoke, my voice was calm. "What happens next?" The man gave me a small, knowing smile. "We go home." And then, for the first time in a long, long time, the clock changed. 3:13 a.m. And the road ahead finally disappeared. The clock ticked over 3:13 a.m., but I didn't feel the truck move. No rumble of the engine, no gentle vibrations through the seat, no hum of tires against asphalt. Just silence. A thick, suffocating silence, pressing against my ears like the world itself was holding its breath. I kept my hands in my lap, fingers twitching slightly, a ghost of the grip I had clenched around the wheel just moments ago. But that didn't make sense, did it? Because there was no road anymore. No cab. No truck stop or highway signs or endless black ribbon of pavement stretching out in front of me. Just darkness. Not the kind you get when you close your eyes. Not even the kind you see in the dead of night, when the power's out and the whole world feels like it's been swallowed up. No, this was something else. A nothingness so complete that it made my own body feel unreal. Like if I stopped thinking about my hands, my feet, my breath, I'd just fade into it. The man beside me, Death, my passenger, my guide, my judge, watched me with quiet patience. I turned to him, my voice lower now, steady despite the cold weight settling in my chest. "This is it, huh?" His dark eyes softened, but he didn't answer right away. He just nodded as if he'd seen this moment play out 1,000 times before. I swallowed, my throat dry. "What happens now?" "That depends," he said simply. I let out a breath, rubbing a hand over my face. "On what?" He tilted his head slightly, considering me. "On you." I frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Death leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "Most people, when they get here, they're already sure of where they're going." His voice was low, steady, like the rumble of distant thunder. "Some step into the dark without a word. Some beg, plead, fight. Pause. Some try to turn back." I felt a flicker of something in my chest, fear, maybe, or worse, hope. "Can I?" His lips pressed together, not quite a frown, not quite a smile. "There is no back, Jake," he said, quiet. Something inside me twisted. "Then where?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his duffel bag again, fingers brushing over the worn fabric, slow and deliberate. And when he pulled out the next thing, my stomach clenched. It was a key. Small. Silver. Unremarkable. He held it between two fingers, watching me carefully. I swallowed. "What's that for?" Death didn't answer right away. He just reached forward, took my hand and placed the key into my palm. It was cold. Too cold. Like something pulled from the deep, frozen earth. And the moment it touched my skin, the darkness shifted. Not all at once. Just a flicker. A ripple in the nothingness, like ink bleeding into water. And then, slowly, a shape began to form in the void ahead. At first, it was just an outline. Faint, hazy, like looking at something through thick fog. But as I focused, it became clearer, more real. A door. A single, weathered door standing alone in the darkness. No walls. No frame. Just there. My pulse quickened. Death sat back, folding his hands in his lap, watching me with quiet expectation. I looked at him, then back at the door. "This is it?" He nodded. I exhaled through my nose, forcing a dry chuckle. Some kind of metaphor? Another nod. Something like that. I turned the key over in my fingers. It felt wrong. Or maybe it felt right, and that's what scared me. I licked my lips. "And what's on the other side?" Death didn't blink. Didn't move. "That," he said softly, "is for you to find out." My throat tightened. I turned back to the door. The wood was old, rough, warped from years of weather it had never seen. The handle was tarnished, rusted at the edges, as if thousands of hands had grasped it before mine. I had a feeling I could stand here forever if I wanted to. That I could sit back down, fold my arms, refuse to go anywhere, and Death would just wait. He wouldn't force me. He never had to. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and then I stepped forward. One step, then another, until I was close enough to touch it. The key burned against my palm. I lifted my hand, slid the key into the lock. It turned with a click, and the door swung open. Inside, light. Blinding, endless, swallowing everything in its path. And for the first time since this ride began, I understood. I remembered. I let out a slow breath and stepped through. 3:14 a.m. The highway stretched empty beneath the glow of the streetlights, nothing but open road ahead. A lone 18-wheeler sat parked at an abandoned rest stop, its engine long since cooled. The driver's seat was empty. The passenger side door was closed. And the world kept moving as if it had never stopped. The light swallowed me whole. Not blinding, not burning, just endless. A brightness without source or shape, stretching in all directions, vast and unknowable. I expected it to hurt, to sear my eyes, to strip me down to nothing, but instead it felt quiet. Like the moment just before dawn, when the world holds its breath. I stepped forward, though I wasn't sure my feet were even touching anything. The ground, if there was any, felt weightless beneath me. The space around me hummed, a sound too deep and distant to be heard, more like a vibration in my bones. For the first time since I picked up that hitchhiker, I was alone. Death hadn't followed me through the door. I turned, half expecting to see him standing there, watching from the threshold like some silent guardian. But there was nothing behind me. No door. No truck. No road. Just light. And then, a whisper. Not a voice, not a word. Just the shape of sound curling around the edges of my mind. A presence pressing in, waiting. I swallowed. Where am I? The whisper grew, a tide rising at the edges of my perception. I couldn't tell if it was answering me or simply existing, but suddenly I wasn't alone. Shapes began to form in the light. Faint at first, flickering like mirages in the heat. Then stronger, solidifying into something real. A highway. The same one I'd been driving for years. Long and empty, stretching endlessly into the horizon. But it wasn't quite right. The sky was too still, too pale. No clouds, no sun, just an infinite stretch of soft white. The road itself was perfect, no cracks, no faded paint, no worn-down asphalt from years of tires grinding it into dust. It was as if someone had built a replica of my world, a memory of it untouched by time. And in the distance, a truck stop. Not just any truck stop. That truck stop. The one from the photo. The one where I had seen myself, standing beside a rig that shouldn't have existed. I felt my pulse in my throat, though I wasn't sure if my body even worked that way anymore. I took a step forward, then another, the weight of something unseen pulling me toward that place. The whispering hadn't stopped, but it wasn't words. It was familiar. Like voices I had once known but couldn't quite place. I walked. The distance between me and the truck stop shrank impossibly fast, like time had no hold here. One moment, it was a tiny shape on the horizon. The next, I was standing at its entrance. The sign above the door buzzed weakly, flickering even though I couldn't see a power source. The letters spelled out something I didn't recognize at first, but as I stared, the shapes twisted, rearranged. Holloway's last stop. My breath hitched. My name. My last stop. The whispers grew louder. Not voices, not yet, but almost. A presence shifting just beneath the surface of this place, waiting for me to step inside. I reached for the door handle. Cold metal, real and solid. I hesitated. Then, I pulled it open. The air inside was thick with the scent of old coffee, motor oil, and something else, something I couldn't quite name. Not unpleasant, just out of place. The diner looked just like I remembered. Vinyl booths cracked at the edges. A long counter lined with chrome stools, each one empty. A jukebox in the corner, silent, covered in a fine layer of dust. And at the far end of the room, a man sat alone in a booth, facing away from me. His shoulders were broad, his posture familiar. His hand rested on the table beside a half-empty cup of coffee, steam curling from its surface. I knew him. Even before he turned his head, even before I saw his face, I knew. I swallowed. My throat was dry, but my feet moved forward anyway, carrying me toward him like I had no choice. The closer I got, the more details settled into place. His jacket the same old, worn leather I had shrugged on every morning. His hands scarred in all the same places mine were. Then finally he turned. And I was staring at myself. Not a reflection. Not a trick of the light. Me. But older. The same face, the same eyes, but lined, weathered. The weight of years I hadn't lived yet settled into his expression. His gaze met mine. He didn't look surprised. He nodded toward the seat across from him. Sit down, Jake. My knees locked for a second, but then I did. The whispers faded to a hush, waiting. I rested my hands on the table, staring at him. What is this? He took a slow sip of coffee, then set the cup down. You already know. My fingers curled against the tabletop. I don't. A small, tired smile. Yeah, you do. I shook my head. This is some kind of test, right? A choice? I open a door and suddenly I end up here. His expression didn't change. Not a choice. He gestured around us. A conversation. I exhaled through my nose. With who? His eyes darkened slightly. With yourself. I swallowed. Why? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Because before you go, you need to understand. My chest tightened. Understand what? He didn't answer right away. He just reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out something small and folded. He slid it across the table. A newspaper clipping. I hesitated, then unfolded it. My stomach dropped. A headline. Local trucker killed in highway collision. A date March 31st, 2009. A photograph. Me. Not from the accident. From before. A photo I didn't even remember taking. My breath came shallow. I know, I whispered. I saw the report. I know I died. The other me watched, waiting. I clenched my jaw. So why am I still here? His gaze was steady. Because you haven't let go. The words settled between us like a weight. I sat back. My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists. That's it. My voice was hoarse. I just let go? He nodded. The whisper stirred again, gentle this time. Not pulling. Not demanding. Just waiting. I exhaled. And then what? The other me smiled, but it was small. Faint. Tired. Then you go home. I looked down at the newspaper. My own face staring back. I let out a breath. And this time, I let go. Epilogue, 3:15 a.m. The highway stretched empty beneath the glow of the streetlights, nothing but open road ahead. A lone 18-wheeler sat parked at an abandoned rest stop, its cab empty, the engine cold. And somewhere far beyond the last mile, beyond the last stop, a man stepped into the light. And finally, after a very long time, he went home. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story.